some of your jobs or your customers are loss making and you don't know which ones they are. Common culprits will be things like it's got low margins, but it's a big job and it contributes to our fixed costs. I bet you've said that before, or your boss has said that. We'll explore that in a minute. Another culprit is it's a very small job, but it's a good margin. But of course, we actually use the same amount of fixed costs or similar. So, you know, setting up the order at the beginning and dealing with the customer and shipping and all those things are probably the same for a small customer as they are for a big customer. So although it looks like it's a good margin, it could actually be a loss maker. And I'm going to show you an example of this now. So let's have a look at this. I want to go back. One more time, you instantly attribute to a particular job. So it's the labor and the materials. So I'm holding a can of Coke here. The variable cost or the direct cost of making this Coke was the can, which is probably about 3 pence, and then the Coke inside, which is probably another 3 pence. And I guess maybe there was some labor involved in making it. It's probably pretty automated, but the variable cost is very low. It could be an hourly rate for the machinery to run that, but obviously it makes about 1,000 or 1,000,000 cans of Coke an hour. So per can, it's very, very cheap. And it might be the cost of buying stuff in and shipping it out again. So those are the costs directly attributable to a product. Okay. And normally those are accurately known because you know what your material cost is and you know what your labor cost is. So when I do a training course, my direct cost is paper and petrol to drive to a customer. And I know what that is. I can measure that. Then I've got my fixed costs, which are sometimes known as indirect costs. And this is everything else: accounts, HR, IT, buildings, heating, reception, marketing, all that stuff. You know, the cost of my website. Now, I know what my website costs, but it's hard to apportion that across all my customers. And a lot of this stuff, I don't even know what it costs, really. I mean, the time to design a training course, who knows? And for a can of Coke, most of the cost is probably marketing, but also customer service, handling complaints, all that sort of big lump of fixed costs. So, okay, so our total costs are all of that. But the problem is it's not very easy to apportion these to a particular customer, and therefore it's difficult to work out whether a customer is profitable or not. So we know these in total, but it's hard to apportion them. So a high maintenance customer might well use more HR time or more customer service time. Maybe the salespeople spend more time with them, but we don't really measure that. Not unless everyone has timesheets, and you don't want to go there. So how do we work it out? And I'm going to show you this now. What you do, I'm going to read through this very quickly, and I'll show you an example that will make it clearer. So you list all your customers. For each one, you put the direct costs. That's easy. And then you estimate the indirect costs. How much do you think of your time, your marketing, etc., is spent on each customer? Add it all up and see if it comes to the total cost. I bet it doesn't. I bet if you add up the time you spend on each customer, it doesn't come to the total of all your time, because we always underestimate it. We always think, oh, well, I don't spend long with that person, but actually you do. Just try looking at the email thread for something you sold recently. You'll find there's hundreds of emails backwards and forwards. You forget how much time and work is involved in looking after customers. So add up the totals. I bet they don't. And then add a bit more to each one until the totals agree, and then see what you've got. I'm going to show you an example of how you do that now, okay? So let's say I've got 3 customers, Albatross, Budgie, and Cormorant, and this is how much money they're paying me, 55, 30, and 15. So I've got 100 coming in. And then my direct costs for doing Albatross are 37. Budgie is only 8. So that looks profitable. Cormorant is 5. That looks pretty profitable. So Albatross is not very profitable. It's low margin, but they're big. And Cormorant is the smallest, but looks like a good margin. And you remember I was saying that these are the dangerous ones. So let's explore them a bit more. So suppose I estimate my fixed costs are 15 for them, 9 for them, and 6 for them. And that kind of makes these okay, doesn't it? Just about. But then when I add this up, I sort of think, well, that comes to 30. But I know my total costs are more than 80. I know that my total costs are actually 95. So therefore, I've got to spread another 15 across these customers. So I go back and I have another think about these fixed costs. And I add, let's say I add another 5 to each customer, because Cormorant does actually take me just as much extra time as Budgie and Albatross. So if I had an extra 5, I've now got fixed costs of 20, 14, and 11. So my total now is 57, because obviously I've got my 20 plus my 37 there, haven't I? So my total costs here are 57, 22, and 16, and that comes to the correct total now of all my costs. But you can see the problem I've got is that Albatross is actually loss-making. Because the margins were pretty tight and there was a bit more fixed cost than I realized, Albatross becomes loss-making. Budgie's still all right. And Cormorant, because he's only small, you know, I thought I was making, that was 11. I thought I was making 4, but actually there's another 5 to be put on Cormorant. So Cormorant is actually costing me 16. I'm losing 1 on Cormorant. So these small ones, they don't need much fixed cost to be added to become non-profitable. So that's how you do the exercise. How much money's coming in? What's the direct cost of servicing them? Guess your fixed costs, see what your total's like. If your total's not quite right, add on the extra that you have to spread it. You don't have to spread it equally, of course. You could spread it however you like between them, and then see in the end who's loss-making and who isn't. And I bet you get some surprises. That is a fascinating exercise to do. Really worth doing. It's only a spreadsheet, won't take you long. Think of it as a game, and then you can target those loss-making customers.